right, it is time to get pantographing. We need to get some thread in that quilt so we can get it off the long arm. So let's talk about paper pantographs. There are several different ways that we can do paper pantographs on advancing, and I'm going to show you all of this great stuff. So this here pattern is scribbles. I'm going to show you a way that we go ahead and line things up on our back end of the machine here. So we're in the middle of the machine, and this machine has mylar that goes under in the middle. So I'm going to start my pantograph right here, and I'm going to unroll it, and I'm going to line it up with that bottom of that pantograph. So let's just talk about what a pantograph is real quick on some of this before we get rolling, because I'm going to be using some terms and we want to make sure that you are all good. So we have a dark line of the pantograph. We have a little light gray line and a light gray line. What these little light gray lines represent is, if you look at this shape right here, it's exactly the shape of this guy right here. So it represents this row below it. If you look at this shape right here, it represents exactly this shape. It represents what could be the future row, okay? So we call this part shadow pantographs, and this is your pantograph, all right? When dealing with a pantograph and your throat space, depending on what throat space you do have, you want to make sure that your quiltable space will be able to handle a pantograph. This one here is 10 inches wide. If you have a 15-inch throat space or below, you are not going to be able to use this pantograph. So you want to go something a little bit smaller. So keep in mind, you want a quiltable space. The quiltable space, as you can see right here on this long arm, we have the bars that are in the way. So that takes away from your throat space. Usually your quiltable space is 4 to 5 inches less than your throat space, okay? So that's a little bit of a good tip there. So back to what we're doing. We're lining this up. We're going to line up that pantograph right with that bottom row here. Then I'm going to lift this up, get my tape out of the way, and put it on in my beautiful blue tape bracelet here. I'm going to explain that in a second. So now I'm going to go ahead and we're going to line that bottom line, the bottom edge of that pantograph with the mylar right here. Okay, step number 1. Step number 2 is I'm going to get my machine over there so we can quilt. We were getting some things ready. So now I'm going to make sure that my quilt top and backing and batting are in between that hopping foot and that needle plate. So I got to get that backing. There we go. That needle plate was stopping my backing real quick. Sometimes from the back you got to stretch, but it's all good. So what we're going to do is we now have this laser light right here. What that means is where the laser is where your needle is. There's the relationship. So what I want to do now is I want to line up the laser. I want to line up the laser to my needle, and I'm going to put this needle in the corner of my quilt top, and I'm going to put it down. So as you can see over here, I put it right here in the top of my quilt, just on the outside of my quilt top right there. Now I'm going to need to line up that with my pantograph here. I do like to always do this shadow pantograph first, because it takes the eye off if you would just have something super square. So I always start right here, but I want to look, and you have to discern your pantograph every once in a while. Sometimes the way some of them start and stop, they're kind of fun and interesting on the edge. So I like to make a nice clean path. So I see that there's a little bit of a break right here on my pantograph. So I want to make sure my next row that I always start right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up, I'm going to loosen up my laser. I'm just going to scoot it over to that bottom row right there. Get it just right. I'm going to tighten it back up. Now, make sure it's tight. because we've had some issues of where, well, the laser, my pantograph kept moving. Well, they forgot to tighten down their laser. And so as the vibrations of the machine, the laser kept moving just a little. So now I'm going to take my tape and I'm going to make sure I put that so my laser is just inside that blue tape. We don't want the blue tape to come anywhere near this rail. We just want it right there on the edge. Now I have, and it looks a little bit kind of crazy because my quilt top is over here to the right about 5 inches. And then I have this part right here. This blue tape now is the indication of your quilt edge on from the back side, the right side, from the front, your left side, okay? Now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna lift up my needle. I'm gonna do the exact same thing for the other side. I'm gonna move my hopping foot over. I am going to put my hopping foot down, my needle down, so it's off the edge of my quilt. Now I'm gonna take this blue tape, we're gonna put that right here so my red dot is just on the inside of my blue tape right there. And try to make it as straight as possible. I'm a little bit crooked, but I'm pretty close there. So now I have both my end side and my start side, because I like the machine from the front side to move from left to right most of the time, okay? So what am I going to do now is we're going to do some practice runs. This is what I like to tell everybody. If you've never pantographed before or you have a new pantograph, it's good to air quilt. Air quilt is just this. We're going to go along the line and we're going to move and practice. I absolutely promise you, going to go off that line. But what I want you to do, I don't want you to do this and go back on the line. What I want you to do is come back on it nice and graceful. You're going to be close. You're going to have to learn how to do what I call the quilting shuffle. You're going to come down here, and now you're going to see the quilting shuffle a little bit better. I'm going to take a little baby step, and take a little baby step, and come over and take another little baby step. Okay, and we're going to keep on going. Do that 2 or 3 times until you feel comfortable. And when you're following that red line, you don't look right at the red dot. Just like driving, you don't look right at the red dot. Just like driving, you're going to look a little bit ahead. And as you're going around, you're going to follow with your eyes a little bit ahead. That will get a little bit smoother feel to what you're looking at instead of on the right, the red dot. Once you've practiced quite a bit, we're going to come back now and we're going to actually quilt. So for the very first time, I am going to do this shadow pantograph, and only at the top, only once, okay? So I'm going to put my laser right on that line. I can see through my machine right here. I'm going to do a needle up, down, but first I'm going to grab my thread. I'm going to do a needle up, down, pull my machine to the side and pull up that bobbin thread. I'm going to set it to the side. Now I am going to gently take a deep breath. It's going to be perfect and I'm going to be fabulous. That's what you're going to say to yourself every single time. Now I'm going to go ahead and start my machine. Okay, when I get to the edge of this line right here, or if I get to blue tape, that means I'm just going to go straight because I'm off the edge of my quilt and it doesn't matter. So I'm going to go straight to the next one. And if you want to stop and just take a good gander at your quilt top up here, we're going to make sure that the tension is okay and I feel the bottom I always do that just every once in a while, just to make sure everything's all good, right? We're gonna go ahead and keep on going. Okay, so I just finished that shadow pantograph. I can cut my threads here and start over on the other side if that's what I'm comfortable with. Or I can just keep stitching, and on the very first time I'm going to roll back the other way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow this line here. Now I'm on the dark black line. So here we go. Hit blue tape. I'm going to go straight. Now I'm going to keep on rolling here. Right, that was way off the side of the quilt, so I don't know. Now I know I don't need to do that little bit ever again, so that's gonna be great. I just finished my first row. Woohoo! It is time to advance. Let's talk about advancing the quilt here. So what I like to, I have all kinds of fun sayings that I say to myself all day long when I'm doing stuff. So I just finished my row. So now what I wanna do is I want to unhook absolutely everything that we have going on here first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around to the front. I'm going to do my magic trick right up here with my thread. I'm going to take my thread back, my machine back, grab that thread right there, do a needle up, down, and bring up the bobbin thread. So now I have the bobbin thread and the top thread, and I am going to cut all three of those. All right, now I'm going to undo my clamps. I'm going to undo my brake. I'm going to undo my brake. And now what I'm going to do is there's a couple of ways that we're going to talk about advancing this, this pantograph and to do the next row. Because we just finished quilting right here. We need to advance it so I can unroll this part of the quilt so we can keep on going. I'm going to show you two ways to do it. On this first one, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to put the needle down at the very top up here. And we're going to roll to the back here. So just to let you know, there's a lot of good walking and quilting. So if I would go ahead and advance this quilt, I would make sure that the laser ends up right on this shadow pantograph, because this is the same shape up here to right here. And remember that I put the needle down in the thread. So we're going to go ahead and we could do it that way. So that's one way with the needle down. Some of my customers don't want to have it move the quilt with the needle down in the machine. All fine. So I'm going to show you another option that you can also do that you do not have to have the needle down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that needle up. I'm going to put the laser right here on the shadow pantograph. And remember I said we have our stitching because we just talked about putting the needle down in the top of the stitching and moving the quilt back. This is a way to do it without the needle down. So I have the laser right there on that stitch point. I am going to wind this quilt, and as I do, I'm going to watch okay, so now I have my laser right here on this shadow pantograph, and my hopping foot is above this last stitch line right here. So now they match. So now I can double check by coming up to this dark black line and looking all the way across to make sure nothing crosses over. It's going to be close, but that's the way it's close here on the paper. It's going to be perfect. So that's how you can double check before you get quilting. All right. What we're going to do now is we unbuckled everything. Now we need to rebuckle everything up, right? I need to put my brake on, my clamps on, and I need to baste the sides of my quilt. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. At the same time, I like to check out to make sure that my batting is nice and straight. Because as you roll, sometimes batting can get kind of crazy, like it just did right here. And also, when you roll, sometimes this is extra tight. So I just unroll that just a little bit, and we're going to make sure that that fabric is touching that batting. I'm going to put my brake on. And I'm going to get these clamps on as well. I'm going to put my scissors down. I was working on a project earlier that I had lots of scissors. All right, I'm going to move my curtain rods down to help. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to baste both sides. Bring up that bobbin thread. You can pin here if you want on your basting of your sides. I feel that with the pressure or the tension from the stitching here and this little bit right here, that there's enough tension on that fabric, so to say, that you don't necessarily have to pin. But if you feel comfortable, more comfortable pinning, go for it. I tend to be not a pinner. Shocker. I like making fun of myself, and sometimes I make fun of myself to the point that I get angry at my piecing. All right, so now we're going to move back to the back because we get ready for row number 2. Row number 2, I do not have to worry about this shadow pantograph anymore. And as I learned, these little bumps right here, I don't need to worry about on the side of that blue tape. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to grab my bobbin thread, do a needle up, down, and I'm going to go ahead and quilt again. Let's talk about a couple of ways you can hold your handlebars. Some people like to hold both handlebars. Some people like to hold just one handlebar. APQS machines tend to move a little bit. They feel like they're easier to move one-handed. I feel the handy quilter ones, I like to have a little bit sturdier of a hold, but I also like to hold the machine right here. So I move. There's something about my visual that I have to have my hands in my peripheral vision. That's just me, but it's a tip for some people. Sometimes it helps, and for me with the quilting it does. So I'm going to start. And just for fun, when I get done with this row, we're going to do the needle down moving of the quilt top. I want to show both ways, okay? All right, row number 2 is done. Look at that, that was pretty fast. Now what we're going to do, we're just gonna unhook everything. I'm gonna unhook my clamps. I'm gonna unhook my thread. And I am gonna unhook my brake. Now we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put my needle down on the very top of this last row right here, right? This is the top. Put that needle down. This time we're gonna advance a little bit different. So remember last time I put my laser light right here at the top of this shadow pantograph, and I moved my machine back to it was underneath that stitch point. We're going to do the opposite now. Now I'm going to roll and we're going to watch this laser come back to this shadow pantograph. Oh, look at that. That's like perfect. Go buy a lottery ticket. All right. Sometimes I have to mess around, just a little tippy tap, but every once in a while. But there we go. We have that perfectly lined up now. So I'm going to move around to the front, and I'm going to reconnect my clamps. I'm going to baste my sides, and I'm going to go ahead and put my brake on. So let me put my brake on first. All right. I magically did that. All right, I'm going to make sure that this is just a little bit, I want this fabric on that backing. I don't want it up above, that would be bad. I'm going to baste my sides. I always cut my threads as I'm going. I like to try to do that as much as possible, so at the end, I don't have to go back and find those threads. Call me lazy, and I don't call me efficient either. All right, got that? And now we are ready to start our third row. And then after this row, we're gonna have just a little bit of a row left. I'm gonna talk about that. How do we end? So let's get started on our third row. So we're gonna put my laser at the beginning of the row, grab my top thread, needle up down, pull that bobbin thread, and let's get rocking and rolling. We're done with row number 3. We're going to move to our last advance. So I'm going to unclamp everything. All right, I'm going to show you that first method that I did, and I'm going to line up my quilt one last time here. Put my scissors up here in my handy dandy holder there. All right. So this time I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this right on this shadow pantograph again. Now I'm going to move the quilt, my last stitch line, to it's underneath that hopping foot, because remember where the laser is where my needle is. I'm going to look over. Perfect. Woohoo! Look at that. Now we're going to go back around and clamp everything back up again. But look at this. We have these leaders right here. I don't want to do this, okay? So what we're going to do is I'm going to undo all my pins here. And take my break off a little bit. I'm going to roll up my leader here, and I'm going to straighten out my batting. I'm going to put my clamps on. I'm going to put my break back on. All right, this time I'm going to show you how I don't pin, okay? So I told you I'm not a pinner, right? But some of my renters, they like to pin here because this is kind of loosey-goosey. And that's okay. That's okay. Here we go. You see me kind of rolling my fingers right here? I'm just making sure this stays just a little bit tight, just by putting a little, see how that moves that quilt just a little tiny bit? Making sure it's just tight. All right, now we're ready for our very last row. So here we go. We're going to see where we are back there. Because the last row, it's kind of a fun row because sometimes it can be the full length or it can be just a little bit. So I'm going to grab my blue tape. I'm going to take my laser cutter, I'm going to take my laser pointer here and I'm going to find my last stitch, which is right here. I'm right good. I'm going to go up on this pantograph and I'm going to keep going up. And guess what? I'm going to be able to do this shadow pantograph and be just perfect. So we're going to talk about if my row ended here. Let's pretend that right here along that last lily pad, right here at the water is where my quilt is, the edge of my quilt. See how I just have just a little bit right here? What I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I'm right there and I'm going to put a piece of blue tape across the whole way here, because that's where my edge is. I would put a blue tape that whole way. So when I came in here, I'd go do, boop, straight, over, straight, and keep on going. So I just have to do this little bit, because this, I'm gonna run off the edge of my quilt and go onto those leaders on the backing maybe, potentially. So this is just like a safeguard of where you need to stop. But since we don't need to worry about this time, like I ended perfect this time, so I get, again, winner, winner, chicken dinner, I get to go buy a lottery ticket when I go home because rarely do I get to end by doing the shadow pantograph on top. So that is truly go buy a lottery ticket. We did that the last time when I got pregnant with twins and I didn't win then either. Maybe I won't win this time, who knows? Maybe I will win this time. Maybe I won't buy one. That's more the option right there. All right, I'm gonna put grab my top thread, needle up, down. Grab that thread. Okay, one of the things I want you to watch while you're quilting, because I've now done, this is my 4th row. we could be running out of bobbin here soon, right? So out of the corner of my eye, I watch that this is kind of flickering as this thread kind of moves up this way, right? Because glide thread and some of your thread, it'll just jiggle and wiggle along here. So I kind of watch it out of my corner of my eye, because if I don't see this moving, that means I'm out of bobbin thread and I'm not stitching, and that would be sad. All right, so we're going to get started. See how this thread is moving? I ran out of thread quite a while ago. I wasn't watching. I was thinking about all of my video going on, so we need to edit that, Mark. Okay, so I ran out of bobbin thread, so let's talk about how to fix that. All right, okay, let's talk about how we're going to go ahead and repair our pattern. So my thread broke right here. Let's talk about tying off. Since this is not a show quilt, I am going to go and do a back and forth stitch to knot my thread. But I am not going to worry about burying threads. If it was a show quilt, I would unstitch so that I could bury these threads and then start this new thread from that stitch forward. So let's go back about 6 stitches, needle up and down right on that stitch right there, bring up my bobbin thread. I'm going to do, and you can go back and forth a little bit here, needle up and down. Okay, to the point that when I do that, I should not be able to pull my top or my bobbin thread. So I want one more and we're good. Right, I cannot pull the bobbin or the top thread. So now I'm going to set this to the side and put my needle down so my machine doesn't move on me. I'm going to go back and finish my pantograph. And since I won the lottery, I'm now just going to go straight on the blue tape and do that last shadow pantograph. So when it gets to the top of the pantograph, go straight. And there you finished your very first quilt on your new long arm. Isn't that wonderful? Or on the rental program. Yay!